Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, today I want to talk about the 7th Samurai of Wano Kuni. So guys, Wano is still at the very beginning, and there's a whole lot of different directions in which the story can go. But I got a really interesting message from Control-Alt on Discord, who suggested a possible influence for at least part of the Wano Kuni arc, that at the very least I just want to share because I think it's likely. Mainly today I want to talk about the famous Japanese film The Seventh Samurai and the possibility that Oda might be heavily inspired by it. But before we get into it, as always, I want to say this guys, which is that Oda is famous for using sources of inspiration in the story of One Piece. He's also famous for changing it in very subtle and meaningful ways in order to create a new vision of whatever he is inspired by. In the case of Wano Kuni, I think that one part of the story might be heavily related to the Seven Samurai, but I think that other parts of the story won't be related at all. We can talk about the giant mountain that exists in Wano, with, as I suppose right now, possible cherry blossoms with healing properties at the top. I think that Oda might be inspired in creating that particular story, but that is not from the Seven Samurai. So he mixes in and matches various lores to create something brand new. But on top of that, he changes these stories in many subtle ways. So even if I say that Oda might be inspired by the Seven Samurai, we're so early in Wano Kuni that even if it is true, we're not exactly sure how he will be inspired and how he might interpret it until we get further along in the story. All we can do now is speculate. But as you guys will already know, I have a lot of fun speculating. But I think first, we should explain the story of the Seven Samurai so that everybody follows along with how I can see it being related. The Seven Samurai is a film from the 1950s which is incredibly famous and critically acclaimed. After its release, there have been several movies dedicated to recreating the story in various contexts and for different audiences. To boil down the story as simple as possible, it's about a village and villagers who get attacked by bandits. These bandits had a history of attacking this village, and the village was looking for a way in order to defend itself. Knowing that an attack was going to occur shortly after their next harvest, the villagers decided to attempt to recruit samurai because they had heard that other village had hired samurai in order to protect themselves from bandits, and that bandits often didn't attack villages protected by samurai. Although this village was not wealthy and did not have money, they were hoping to find samurais that at the very least were hungry. Initially, the villagers had very little success, until one day they saw a samurai rescue a young boy from a thief. The villagers asked him for help, and eventually he agreed. Upon recruiting him, they also recruited his new disciple, a samurai essentially in training, and from him his friend and 3 other samurai. And lastly is a man who claims to be a samurai but most likely is not. And thus you have the 7 samurai. The story then goes on from this point as an epic battle between the samurai, the villagers, and the bandits. The samurai help fortify and defend the village, while the bandits bring with them 3 weapons of great power, 3 firearms. And so part of the story revolves around the samurai attempting to and successfully stealing some of these firearms from the bandits until the epic climactic battle where the bandit leader comes in with his rifle. But taking this back to One Piece, guys, I think that it's very possible that the Shogun and Kaido's crew are the bandits. Oda has already made it blatantly clear the conditions that the village people living in Wano are facing. They don't have food, everything is turning rotten, and the ones responsible are the beast pirates and the Shogun. In the story, the villagers are looking for samurai to help them, and we know in the story of One Piece, Kinemon is leading the rebellion against the Shogun. And in fact, the idea of samurai protecting villages is something Oda has already told us occurs. He said specifically that in the village that Otsama came from, the samurai were defeated and the village destroyed. That in and of itself could almost be described as a kind of alternate ending to the story of these 7 samurai. the one in which the samurai do not win. I also thought that it was interesting that Oda chose for this village to have been defended by 5 samurai. In the story of these 7 samurai, there's really only 5 true samurai. You have 1 apprentice and 1 fraud. Speaking of an apprentice samurai, in the story of One Piece, we already have Otama. While she is not a samurai, she does want to become a ninja. Perhaps the 2 terms might be interchangeable or exchangeable in One Piece, so maybe Otama does represent the apprentice. Additionally, in the story of the 7 samurai, the villagers who were recruiting samurai to defend them happened upon one who saved a young boy from a thief. And in the story of One Piece, you have similarities to this idea with both Zoro and Luffy. Luffy obviously saving Otama, and Zoro saving Otsuru, perhaps getting the attention of the villagers who need help. So from this point, the villagers will obviously ask Luffy and Zoro to help them. And this is also interesting because I, for one, wondered why exactly Oda chose for Luffy to wield a sword. It seemed kind of ridiculous. But under the context that Oda is inspired by the 7 samurai, it actually makes a ridiculous amount of sense. In this case, Luffy would be another samurai recruited to protect the villagers. But he wouldn't really be a samurai, he would be a fraud. Just like one of the original 7 samurai. Perhaps Otama is the apprentice and Luffy is the fraud. In the story of the 7 samurai, the fraud claimed that he was a samurai because he had a document proving it. However, the document was dated incorrectly. It was for a child, not for an adult. But he used this as proof that he was a samurai, and I think that Oda might throw in a joke that Luffy claims he is a samurai because he has a sword. But here, guys, we're kind of supposing that Luffy, Zoro, and Otama are members of the, quote, 7 samurai. And if Oda actually wants to make a group composed of 7 people, then we would need 4 others. And I think the first names that come to mind are obviously Kinemon, Kanjuro, and Raizo. That's 3. And maybe the 4th is Tengu Yama Hitetsu, or a currently unrevealed unknown samurai. Now, for some of you, this might be a letdown, right? If you want a 7 samurai recreation, you want 7 badass Zoro-like unrevealed samurais with, you know, the best blades possible and all that. But I think that it would be really profound for Luffy and Zoro, as well as Kinemon and the rest, and Otama as well, to end up becoming the 7 samurai that saved Wano Kuni from the bandits, or in this case, the Shogun. It almost gives them a place in Wano's future mythology, in their folklore. But you know, to take this connection a little bit further, if we are thinking along these lines, then it kind of separates the fight versus Kaido and the fight versus the Shogun, which is something that we have discussed at length a lot in the past. How is it going to work? Is Luffy and crew going to defeat the Shogun and then fight Kaido? Is Kaido going to show up somewhere in the middle? We just do not know. But arguing from the perspective of the 7 samurai saving Wano Kuni from the Shogun, then I would have to assume then that Kaido is not present yet. And this is why this is interesting, guys, because the 7 samurai is a famous Pyrrhic victory, a story of a Pyrrhic victory. Essentially, a victory in which the heroes of the story, the samurai themselves, didn't win. Or I guess more accurately, they won, but suffered heavy losses. By the end of the 7 samurai, many of the samurai had died. Now, in Oda's possible recreation of the 7 samurai, will the samurai die? I don't know. If it happens, that would be crazy. But I'm just going to base on the assumption that no, they're not going to die. But another way that this could be described as a Pyrrhic victory in the story of One Piece is that even after defeating the Shogun, what you are doing is inciting the wrath of Kaido. You are forcing Kaido to come and meet you right then and there. So yeah, you won. But did you? And of course, I think that there are other ways in which Oda could explore devastating losses to the heroes of the story without actually killing them. Again, I've talked at length about the possibility that the crew's lives become endangered and Chopper is forced to come up with his panacea very shortly after Wano. Maybe this will be the beginning of the time in the story where we can really see Luffy's lifespan start to drain away. But this sort of leads me into the only real speculation that I can make, because again guys, I think that the story of One Piece is incredibly complex, and even if the story is driven in large part as an inspiration to the Seven Samurai, there's so many other things going on, there's so many differences that we can't count on it to predict much. But I think that there are certain elements of the story which Oda might again be additionally influenced by. What I want to talk about is the bandits' weapons, the firearms. As I've already said, I believe that the bandits might be represented by the Beast Pirates, and we also know that the Beast Pirates have very special and unique weapons which should be feared. Caesar's weapons. Weapons of mass destruction. I wonder if Kaido's weapons are how exactly Oda was influenced by the weapons of the bandits in the story of the Seven Samurai. And I think that this is an interesting point, guys. What made the Seven Samurai, the end of it, a Pyrrhic victory was the devastating losses suffered by the samurai themselves. Many of them died, and the reason they died was because of the bandits' weapon. Maybe Oda's take on the Seven Samurai and the One Piece version of this Pyrrhic victory is the fact that Kaido's weapon will do devastating damage to the One Piece equivalent of the Seven Samurai and the Strat crew. You know, I hadn't thought about this in a long time. We've known about Kaido's weapons for the longest time, but we and I always made the assumption that Caesar would just be present in Wano to help them. Just as he was present in Zou to sort of suck up all the gases that were produced by his weapon, he would do the same in Wano. But where is Caesar? We don't even know where he is. There is absolutely no guarantee that he shows up again in Wano, and certainly no guarantee that he shows up on time. Let's say that the Strats deal with the threat of the Shogun, and coming up right afterwards is Big Mom and Kaido, and the Kaido subordinates in Wano use one of Caesar's gas weapons, without Caesar being present. The thought sends shivers down my spine. And is it a coincidence or not that the one person that we know would probably not be affected by Caesar's weapons is Monkey D. Luffy with his immunity to poison? Now in the story of the Seven Samurai, the bandits possessed 3 such devastating weapons. And in that story, the samurai attempted to steal them, they stole 2, but it was the last one which ultimately did them a lot of harm. I don't know if One Piece is going to follow beat for beat exactly what the Seven Samurai did. I don't know if there's going to be some plot to try and steal Kaido's weapons, or if they're just going to bring them. But I think it's worth considering. This would be an incredible setup, both to emphasize Chopper's role with medicine, and potentially finding a panacea, as well as setting up for a dramatic clash of Luffy versus 2 other Yonko. But as always guys, this is just a speculation. I drew parallels and connections between the story of the Seven Samurai and One Piece, but there's no guarantee that it's related beyond anything very, very subtle and unimportant. But I think in the early stages of Wano, this makes for a pretty strong argument. At the very least, I thought it was really interesting. And in general, I just think that the more that you know about Japanese lore and Japanese pop culture will enhance your experience of Wano Kuni, because Oda has already made it clear that there are influences and parallels everywhere. But yeah, as always guys, curious as to what you guys thought about this, whether you agree with anything that I had to say, you disagree, just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.